During this presentation, the following key topics will be addressed. Budget principles. Number 2, budget process. 3, multi-annual income and expenses, projections for 2025 through 2027 on economic forecast. 4, 2024 budget amendment versus 2025 draft budget. 5, capital investments. 6, loan overview. 7, key government entities. Financial status and strategies for key entities. 8, strategic focus of the Ministry of Finance. 9, structure of the Ministry of Finance. 10, expenses and income of the Ministry of Finance. 11, key goals, policies, and initiatives on which my focus will be for the year 2025. The 2025 budget is based on the 2024 budget amendment and does not include any new policies, initiatives. This approach is a direct result of the multiple elections held last year in consultation with the CFT. It was agreed that this conservative approach would be the best way to avoid additional delays in approving the budget for 2025. What does no new policies mean? It means no unachievable or unsubstantiated revenue assumptions or cost-cutting measures. This budget is conservative and only includes matters that are already in the pipeline. For example, in previous years, revenue items such as the tourist tax were included without completing the necessary groundwork, which resulted in unrealistic income projections and mandatory budget cuts/amendments. In this budget, you will not find transaction taxes, tourist entry taxes, or revenue increases due to higher fees on or policy changes. While there are plans to increase revenue and reduce costs, for example, through better management of government vehicles and travel expenses, these measures will only be included when the supporting financial data has been verified to ensure they are realistic and achievable in 2025. Not including them in the budget does not mean that they would not be worked on. During this presentation, I will delve into the initiatives and goals for the Ministry of Finance for the year 2025. Matters such as the 2% indexation and the 1% increase in vacation allowance for both civil servants and subsidized schools are included in the 2025 budget. The reason they have been included is because these specific laws have already been reviewed by the Council of Advice and are much further in the process, which means realistically they will be completed in 2025. Failing to move forward with this budget and further delaying the budget would put us in the same position as last year, where delays meant waiting for the budget to be enacted before paying out these balances. The budget cycle actually requires approval before the start of the new year. Despite 2 elections, the ministries have worked diligently to prepare this budget, addressing essential needs. Vacancies included in the 2024 budget amendment remain in the 2025 budget. These are positions where the hiring process has already started and must continue upon enactment of the budget. Why a conservative approach? A conservative approach budget prioritizes caution and financial stability through realistic projections. It is easier to add to the budget later based on improved revenues or unforeseen needs than to remove items after commitments have been made. This approach allows the new government time to assess its policy priorities and determine which initiatives are realistic for inclusion in a 2025 budget amendment. Not all new policies or ideas should automatically be included in the budget. Their inclusion depends on the time required, the necessary trajectory, and when they can realistically affect revenue or expenses. Furthermore, the absence of a policy in the budget does not prevent work from starting. The budget reflects the year in which revenue or expenses will be realistically adjusted based on measures taken. The goal is to create realistic budgets. Ideally, any future amendments will focus on increasing revenue based on actual results, rather than reducing overstated income and expenses. This ensures better financial planning and stability while reducing the need for frequent amendments in Parliament. This approach allows us to avoid overestimating income, which can lead to shortfalls, while ensuring that expenditures are carefully managed. By planning conservatively, we create the flexibility to address unexpected challenges, such as economic fluctuations, emergencies, or unplanned costs. This method reflects responsible financial management, prioritizing sustainability and adaptability to ensure we are prepared to seize opportunities and mitigate risks as they arise. As Minister of Finance, I firmly believe this is a fundamental, sound financial governance. Revenue estimates for the 2025 budget are based on historical data from Q2 of 2024, forecasted and adjusted to align with GDP projections. Similarly, expenditure estimates are grounded in Q2 data, with necessary adjustments for inflation, union agreements, and existing obligations. As this is a policy-neutral budget, the potential for substantial surpluses in 2024 and 2025 is limited. The 2025 draft budget includes only initiatives that began in 2024 and are expected to continue into 2025, alongside the anticipated effects of economic growth. Preparations for the 2025 budget began early 2024. The budget process, which takes approximately 9 months to complete, starts at the beginning of the year with income projections for the following year. This is followed by the allocation of resources to the various ministries and high councils, as well as the collection and compilation of relevant information. It is crucial that all ministries submit their respective budgets timely. For the 2026 budget, this will be a key priority, with each minister responsible for ensuring the timely submission of their ministry's draft budget. The first draft of the 2025 budget was submitted to the Council of Ministers on September 4th. This delay occurred because in May 2024, the amendment of the 2024 budget became a priority, delaying the 2025 budget. On September 13th, the 2025 budget was sent simultaneously to CFT for their Article 11 advice and to Yazet and Way for a legal assessment. The CFT returned their Article 11 advice within 2 weeks, within the 2-week review period on September 27th, and the Yazet and Way legal advice followed on October 16th, a month after submission. After incorporating these inputs, the budget was resubmitted to the Council of Ministers for approval. It was then forwarded to the Council of Advice on November 5th, whose feedback was received on December 2nd. The necessary changes were made to the 2025 budget based on the feedback from the Council of Advice. The final draft, including the NADA report, was approved by the Council of Ministers on December 10th and subsequently submitted to the Governor on December 11th for presentation to Parliament. On December 18th, 2024, we have commenced the Central Committee meeting on the 2025 budget, and today, January 13th, 2025, we commenced with the public meeting. As Minister of Finance, I will present an overview of the total budget during this public meeting, highlighting the key aspects of the 2025 budget, and will then specifically delve into the Ministry of Finance. In addition, each minister will provide a detailed presentation outlining their ministry's expense, income, and intentions for the year 2025.
Asset V insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? Asset V is cardless. Request your My Asset V account today and enter the virtual office of Asset V. Go to assetv.sx and sign up now.
Asset V, yeah. Your social health insurances.
Through you, Madam Chair, for the Minister of Finance. According to some information that I received from small business owners, it was stated that one of the major banks would raise their credit card terminal fee this year from $40 to $60, and the e-commerce from $20 to $40. The small businesses are already being challenged as they are not able to compete to the extent of the big businesses. It was mentioned today earlier about certain supermarkets taking advantage and finding new ways to deal with the whole banking system and paying with the card. So how can the ministry regulate these fees to ensure we don't overcharge our small businesses to a fair chance to survive? To the Minister of TIAT, through you, Madam Chair, could the Minister please provide an overview of decisions taken regarding lottery booths from 2021 to 2024? Was there any decision taken during that period of accept payments, license fees, or otherwise? Through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister of Romy. We've seen the road signage. There's still a lot that are damaged throughout the roads. Is there a plan to restore all road signage? It appears also to be a safety concern as well, as for some poles which are damaged alongside the road can cause a safety hazard to road users. Also, I've spoken to some persons in the community who live in the hillsides, and after the heavy rainfall that we have received the past couple of months, there's a concern for landslides onto their property. What are the procedures to inform the ministry and to ensure safety to those living on the hillsides? Through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister of Justice. Scooters has been a topic over the past, not only today, but also through the Central Committee meeting. What is the plan to ensure that those driving without helmet or number plate get a fine? For example, every morning when I go into the South Reward area and when I come back out, there are some police officers who are conducting the traffic. And sometimes I'm there and I see the scooter driver pass me, pass the police officer, and nothing is done. So would it be possible maybe to have a second officer on scene to ensure that then fines can be taken, given to those riders, so that way, because otherwise it becomes acceptance when the scooter driver also doesn't have helmet or doesn't have a number plate, can pass a police officer on the road without any consequence. It was mentioned about safety and tint on vehicles as well by my fellow MP, which caused a tragic accident a few days ago. How can we expect the public to adhere to these rules if we have a government, cars driving around fully tinted? You know, I urge the government to also lead by example when it comes to these matters. To the Minister of VSA, through you, Madam Chair. Previous MPs have mentioned cannabis. I understood that there is a work group between the ministries of TIAT, Justice, and VSA. Has this work group provided your cabinet, Minister, through you, Madam Chair, with all the documentation as it pertains to the work group pertaining to cannabis, where there's a tripartite committee between the Ministry of TIAT, Justice, and VSA to handle the... So I'm asking, through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister of VSA if that work group has given the Minister of ASA the information that was gathered already from the work group, seeing that you're new as well, and maybe also the Minister of Justice, seeing that she just took the chair, that she also has that information pertaining to the cannabis. This is, through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister of ASA, but it also relates to the Minister of General Affairs, the Prime Minister. There's a job expo which is going to be had in the Netherlands in March. There was one, I noticed that last year the Department of P&O was represented and the NESC when they went, and they had separate booths. Is there a way that if they are going this year again in March to represent St. Martin, if there's a collaboration also to save costs, cut costs, that they collaborate and have one booth with the government of St. Martin, P&O, and the NESC together? I think that would save some costs. And my final questions through you, Madam Chair, to the Minister of ECYS. There is a lot of talk about scholarships. We've heard it today as well. What is the vision of the ministry when it comes to scholarships, but pertaining to sports within our youth? I ask because oftentimes we associate scholarships when it comes to college and going to college. But when it comes to sports, we should start to look into the possibility of providing scholarships earlier, such as athletes that we see have a skill that want to attend a high school. What are the possibilities when it comes to that? When it comes to sport, it is crucial to develop our athletes at an earlier age. Thank you, Madam Chair. That will be all for me.
We have received this document last year. We were given the opportunity to go through and ask questions during the Central Committee. We also received the outvoting sabotage, the implementation plan, where we could see what was spent so far. And based on all of this, I did my review. And I just have a few questions that focus primarily on the improvement of the quality of life of our people, our citizens. So the main issues top of mind of our people in St. Martin right now has been mentioned before, but I would still like to mention because it's so important. The rise in crime, the garbage, the motorbikes, and the scooters. People don't feel safe anymore. That's a big thing, because for quality of life, you need to feel safe. And it affects everything. It also affects our economy, because if you don't feel safe, and some other members mentioned, and you just want to stay home, you will not go and enjoy the entertainment, the bars, or go out, which then will translate into funds going into the coffers of government, because those establishments that you go to will pay taxes. So it puts us, it sets us back. So that's why it's so important. With regards to the motorbikes and the fear that people have driving, and I mean, I think on my elderly mother driving on the road, I think on my young son who is not familiar maybe with the potholes, familiar with how the bikers ride. You're very concerned when they go on the road. I'm concerned when I go on the road. And I think that if I give a personal story, I'm a person who have been in an accident with scooters twice, not once, twice. Once when I was driving, and once when I was being driven as a minister. It leaves you scared, and it leaves you shaken. And to know that there is nothing in place, there is no insurance. So if your vehicle is damaged, there's nothing that is done. In my case, where I was stationary on the road at a crosswalk, I watched the person crossing the crosswalk being knocked down by the scooter, lying unconscious on the crosswalk, and the scooter approaching my windscreen. And in the last moment, it was diverted by the car in front of me. That person went to the police station. He didn't have any papers on him, and the police let him go home to bring it back. Of course, he never came back because he didn't have any. And 2 days later, when I was driving over the Lexi Arnell Road, better known as the Old Cake House Road, I witnessed the same gentleman coming in the wrong direction on a different scooter, and he actually stopped and watched at me because they are above the law and they get away. So having said all of that, my question to the minister is, I have seen the crushing of the scooters now, which means that you're making way that you can pick up more scooters. But what can you tell us? Can you tell the community something, especially people who have been, I'll call it victims of these accidents? What can you tell us to reassure us, to make us feel like this is concretely happening and something will be done this year about the scooters and the way how people are not abiding by the rules and the laws of the road network? So that's my question for the Minister of Justice. I have some more questions for the Minister of Justice once my computer here agrees with me. So there are many social media postings right now about crime in St. Martin, and we have seen up to yesterday where a Canadian entity issued a warning about visiting St. Martin. And on social media, you can find so many of these warnings. The question that I have, this one is more for Tiat. I'm sorry that it's mixed up now, but this one is for Tiat. What is the tourist office doing? Has the tourist office started actions to combat the negative publicity that St. Martin is getting right now? And coming back to the Minister of Tiat, you mentioned yesterday the purchase of cameras for combating crime. Is there anything else that you can mention concretely so that people feel safer? What else can you mention for us? Just like you mentioned the cameras, what else can you mention that you are working on this year to make us feel safer as a community? To the Minister of Justice, sorry, through you, Madam Chair. So the Minister of Tiat, what is, through you, Madam Chair, what is being done by the Tourist Office to combat the image of St. Martin, the negative image of St. Martin now in social media and in the media? And to the Minister of Tiat, the Minister of Justice, what, through you, Madam Chair, can you tell us that else that is being done besides the cameras, the purchase of the cameras?
The Anguilla government, in a landmark decision, has passed an act that will regularize the status of great-grandchildren of Anguillans. At a ceremony in the Valley Monday, a preacher who serves the Spanish community there hailed the development, declaring in his words, "Before we were seen as foreigners, but today we have been welcomed as children of the land." We have more in this report.
I am pleased to announce that the Executive Council has approved a new policy granting great-grandchildren of Anguillians exemption from the work permit requirement. This landmark policy, spearheaded by the Ministry of Home Affairs, is aimed at strengthening family ties within the island, but also fostering a connection with the Anguillian diaspora by recognizing descendants of Anguillians worldwide.
Tonight, hundreds of people in Anguilla, mainly Spanish-speaking residents, finally feel like they belong.
Who fought with previous administrations to make this happen.
Pero ustedes prestaron sus oídos.
But you gave us your ear.
e hicieron esta realidad.
and made this happen.
Gracias, gracias,
Thank you
por ello.
for this.
Que Dios
It was an emotional ceremony for scores of them who attended Monday's event. They looked on as Minister of Home Affairs officially signed a document that is effectively their new passport to greater opportunities and a better life.
A cada uno de los que lo hicieron posible.
In the name of each and every one of them, and in my name, I thank you and everyone who made this possible.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
In Anguilla, there are hundreds of descendants of nationals, many of them from the Dominican Republic, which was a popular destination for workers from Anguilla in the 1950s and 60s.
That it is a recognition of our historic nomadic perseverance as Anguillians, who bravely venture to other countries to work and provide for their families, some of whom settled abroad.
Premier Dr. Ellis Webster welcomed this group of residents whom he notes can live their lives with more dignity and greater hope.
We consider you to be brothers and sisters.
Nosotros los consideramos hermanos y hermanas.
Before today, the great-grandchildren of Anguillans born abroad could have only relocated and worked there with a work permit. Now, there is no more such barrier. One man asked if he could now bring to Anguilla his wife and his child, and the answer was yes.
We work to bring my wife and children.
Minister Hayden Hughes said the result of the new executive action come from a government that listens to people and acts.
And this is a result
Y esto
of
es un
those
resultado
discussions.
de esas conversaciones.
So as much as possible, remember,
Así que
we
recuerden,
rely on you to guide
nosotros
us,
contamos con ustedes
to advise us,
de guiarnos, de avisarnos,
and we listen.
y les escuchamos.
And today just shows that we do listen.
Y hoy es una demostración de que nosotros escuchamos.
And beyond listening, we make it happen.
At the end of the ceremony, there were more widespread expressions of gratitude as some of the direct beneficiaries interacted with members of the Anguilla Progressive Movement government. I am Tahira Burke at the news desk for the Carib Update News Service.
Your social and health insurance is your social and health insurances.
Are you SXV insured? Do you have a valid medical insurance status? SXV is cardless. Request your My SXV account today and enter the virtual office of SXV. Go to sxv.sx and sign up now.
Your social and health insurances.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal.
Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15, 1929, and graduated as the valedictorian of Crozier Theological Seminary in 1951. King became pastor of a Baptist church in Montgomery, Alabama, and later completed his Ph.D.
Martin Luther King was a religious man. He was a pastor. He looked at racism and all of the so-called separate but equal laws and the terrible treatment of people of color in the United States. And he said, this is absolutely wrong. This is against God's will. This is not recognizing the dignity of peoples. And he made us all face that in very powerful ways.
On the eve of Rosa Parks' refusal to move to the back of a city bus in 1955, King was chosen to lead a citywide bus boycott. 2 years later, King and a group of civil rights activists formed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference to conduct nonviolent protests for civil rights.
When Martin Luther King led the Alabama boycott, that was a major turning point in the fight for civil rights. What you saw was people who had been fractionized coming together as one, walking together with others joining the fight. This was when people, America, the world, stood up and said, whoa, what are we looking at here? An amazing time.
Inspired by Gandhi's activism, King worked with the SCLC to organize black voters and civil rights protests. In 1963, King was arrested at a march in Alabama. During his prison time, King wrote a rebuttal to an article denouncing his methods. His longhand notes on the margins of the newspaper became known as Letter from Birmingham Jail and was famously republished and studied in colleges across the country.
Martin Luther King was a man of God who believed that calling necessitated social change in the present. And he put his life on the line for that calling.
Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty! We are free at last!
On August 28, 1963, King led more than 20,000 people in a massive demonstration at the Lincoln Memorial, where his speech, I Have a Dream, became a defining moment in civil rights history. Through his work, King helped pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and received the Nobel Peace Prize that same year.
Martin Luther King, according to Time in 1963, personified the civil rights movement. He took on one of the greatest challenges of his time and was one of the people that most influenced this very transformative time in American history.
Although King faced criticism from more militant black leaders, he continued his peaceful efforts toward both racial and economic justice. After delivering his I've Been to the Mountaintop speech at a rally in Memphis, King was assassinated the next day on April 4, 1968, while standing at the balcony of his motel room.
King's assassination was, I think, devastating for many people. But there's also a rising level of organization, and many people, King's assassination galvanizes them into many kind of black power movements across the country, many anti-poverty movements. So it's both a moment of despair, but also a moment of political flowering.
Posthumously, King was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1977 and a Congressional Gold Medal in 2004. Today, the Martin Luther King Jr. National Holiday continues to be honored on the third Monday of every January.